There is a level of consistency that doesn't inspire people. It unsettles them. You've seen it before. That person who shows up every single day, quietly, relentlessly, while everyone else slowly disappears. No motivation speeches, no dramatic effort, just presence. At first, people admire it. Then they start feeling uncomfortable. Because that kind of consistency doesn't just prove discipline, it exposes excuses. And today, I want to show you why some people become unbreakable, not by trying harder, but by removing the very possibility of quitting. This is not a productivity trick. It is not motivation. It is an ancient mental system used long before self-help books existed. A system designed to erase inner negotiation. Once you understand it, you don't build habits anymore. You become someone who cannot act any other way. But there is a cost. To use this system, a part of you must die, the part that keeps asking, "Do I feel like it today?" And not everyone is ready for that. Before we go further, pause for a moment. Think of one habit you have tried and failed to keep, because this story will confront exactly why that keeps happening. The story begins with someone ordinary. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel was not lazy. He was intelligent, capable, and deeply self-aware. On paper, his life looked fine. But there was one pattern he could never escape. Every time Daniel tried to change his life, the same cycle appeared. Monday came with clarity. This time would be different. He planned carefully. He felt ready. By Wednesday, the first negotiation began. "I'll do it later tonight. I've already worked hard today. One exception won't matter." By Friday, the practice was gone. Not officially abandoned, just postponed. Sunday night arrived with guilt. Promises were rewritten. Next week would be the real start. And the cycle restarted. Daniel tried everything people recommend. Habit trackers, accountability partners, rewards, morning routines, even motivational videos that made him feel powerful for exactly 15 minutes. Nothing lasted. Not because Daniel lacked discipline, but because he was fighting something he couldn't see. Every failure strengthened the same silent belief. I'm just not the kind of person who stays consistent. And slowly, without noticing, Daniel stopped trusting himself. He didn't quit because things were hard. He quit because every decision required negotiation. Every day, his mind asked the same exhausting questions. Should I do it today? When is the best time? How much is enough? Most people think inconsistency is a motivation problem. It isn't. It's a decision problem. And the more decisions you make, the faster your discipline collapses. Daniel didn't need more willpower. He needed something far more dangerous. A system that would remove choice entirely. Daniel discovered it by accident. Not in a self-help book, not in a productivity podcast, but in the writings of ancient Zen practitioners in Japan. For centuries, Zen monks followed a principle so strict that to modern minds it feels almost inhuman. They called it gyoji, continuous practice without a single gap. In one monastery, a bell has rung at the same hour every morning for hundreds of years, not approximately, not around that time, the exact same moment. And when the bell rings, the monks rise. What never happens in that temple is the question modern people ask every day. Should I do it today? That question does not exist, because the monks understood something Daniel never had. The human mind divides commitments into two categories, reversible and irreversible. Reversible commitments invite negotiation. I can always do it later. Missing once doesn't matter. I'll restart tomorrow. Irreversible commitments simply happen. When a monk takes his vows, he is not promising to try. He is declaring what he is. Not, I will meditate, but I am a practitioner. The identity shifts, the negotiation dies. Daniel realized something unsettling. Every promise he had ever made was private, invisible, easy to abandon without consequence. So he did something radical. He wrote a declaration, not a goal, an identity statement. I am a person who practices every day, without exception, for the next 90 days. He signed it. He shared it publicly. He told people who would remember if he failed. Friends laughed. Some were uncomfortable. Others said he was being extreme. Perfect, because now quitting carried a cost. Giving up no longer meant rest. It meant public collapse of identity. The negotiation had been removed. But a deeper battle was still waiting, because even without negotiation, the body resists. The first morning, Daniel woke up and followed the plan. The second morning, he felt tired. By the third morning, his body began to rebel. His mind was no longer negotiating. The decision had already been made, but his biology didn't care about declarations or identity. It wanted comfort. It wanted rest. It wanted to return to familiar patterns. This is where most people fail, even after committing publicly. They think the problem is motivation. It isn't. The real enemy is friction. Every day, without realizing it, you burn mental energy on the same useless question. When should I do this? Morning or night? Before work or after? Today or tomorrow? Each decision drains fuel from the brain, fuel that should be used for action. Daniel understood the monk's second rule, non-negotiable hours. He chose a single fixed time, not because it was optimal, not because he loved it, but because it eliminated excuses. The world was quiet. No messages, no interruptions, no one demanding his attention. The first week was brutal. His body fought every morning. This resistance was normal. The body is a machine built on patterns. Change the pattern and it pushes back. But something strange happened in the second week. Daniel began waking up before the alarm. His body was learning. By the 14th day, the alarm rang and his feet touched the floor before his conscious mind could interfere. No debate, no emotion, just movement. This is the hidden power of fixed hours. It's not about finding the perfect time. It's about removing time as a variable. But just when Daniel thought he had won, his mind found a new opening. Because while the when was fixed, the what was still flexible. And flexibility is where old patterns survive.
At first, Daniel felt proud of his progress. He showed up every day at the same hour. The schedule was locked, but the practice itself kept changing. Some mornings he meditated. Other days he read. Sometimes he exercised. Sometimes he told himself reflection was enough. The time was fixed, but the content wasn't, and his mind noticed. Instead of arguing about when to act, it started arguing about what to do. Should today be lighter? Should it be more intense? Should it feel meaningful? Each option felt reasonable, and each one reopened negotiation. This is where most people misunderstand consistency. They believe variety keeps things fresh. In reality, variety is where discipline dies. Every choice, no matter how small, creates a crack where resistance leaks back in. The Zen masters understood this centuries ago. They taught form, doing the same thing, the same way, every single day. Not because it was efficient, but because repetition forces the mind to surrender. Daniel made a brutal decision. He locked everything down. Same actions, same order, same duration. No creativity, no personalization. Friends said he was becoming robotic. Someone told him he would burn out. They didn't understand. Burnout doesn't come from repetition. It comes from constant decision-making. By the third week, Daniel's mind went to war. Every morning it screamed for novelty. This is pointless. You're not a machine. Mix things up. Then something broke. Not his discipline, but his resistance. The voice grew quieter. By the sixth week, Daniel was halfway through the sequence before he even realized he had started. The practice was beginning to run itself. But life doesn't stop testing you, and the most dangerous test was still coming.
This is where most systems collapse. Not because people are weak, but because they believe a dangerous lie. The all or nothing lie. If I can't do it perfectly, why do it at all? If today isn't ideal, I'll start again tomorrow. This thinking doesn't protect discipline, it destroys it, because it creates gaps. And gaps are not neutral. A gap is an invitation. It invites your old identity to return. The Zen masters warned against this. They taught that practice must continue without even a moment of interruption. Not because perfection matters, but because continuity does. A river may slow during drought, but it never stops flowing. The moment it stops, it is no longer a river, only a memory. Daniel understood this just in time. One morning, he woke up sick. In the past, this would have ended everything. Sick day becomes rest day becomes exception becomes abandonment. This time, he did something different. He reduced the practice, but he did not remove it. A few minutes, minimal effort, same sequence. The practice survived. Then came travel, disrupted schedules, unpredictable days. Daniel adapted, not by skipping, but by shrinking. He practiced in unfamiliar places, in uncomfortable conditions, without perfect tools. Nothing looked impressive, but nothing broke. This is the difference between discipline and continuity. Discipline relies on force. Continuity relies on identity. Daniel was no longer trying to stay consistent. He was simply someone who does not create gaps. And that identity needed one final protection, because some obstacles don't announce themselves.
Most people don't fail because they give up. They fail because they are caught unprepared. The real consistency killers are not the planned days, they are the unexpected ones. The sick child, the late meeting, the broken routine, the exhaustion you didn't see coming. When an obstacle appears suddenly, you are forced to decide under stress, and under stress, the brain chooses comfort every time. The Zen monasteries survived centuries without missing a single day of practice because they never decided in the moment. The response already existed. When the hall was unavailable, practice moved elsewhere. No discussion, no debate, no exception. Daniel copied this logic into his own life. He wrote down every obstacle that had ever broken his consistency. Then he removed choice. When X happens, I do Y. No thinking, no evaluation, no emotion. If he was sick, the practice became minimal, but present. If he was traveling, the location changed, not the sequence. If time was stolen, the duration shrank, not the identity. Each scenario had a predetermined answer. This changed everything, because now the brain didn't need to solve problems, it only needed to execute. The nervous system relaxed. There was no anxiety about tomorrow, because tomorrow was already decided. By the 7th week, Daniel noticed something unsettling.
He sometimes finished the practice without remembering starting it. His body moved, his mind followed. The system was no longer powered by effort, it was powered by certainty. And certainty reshapes identity. By the final weeks, something fundamental had changed. Daniel was no longer doing the practice. He was expressing who he had become. There was no excitement, no resistance, no internal dialogue. The sequence happened the same way brushing teeth happens, not because it felt meaningful, but because not doing it felt wrong. This is the moment most people never reach, because they confuse consistency with effort. Effort fades, identity does not. Others began to notice. Co-workers said he seemed different. Friends joked that he was becoming obsessive. Someone told him it wasn't healthy to be this rigid. Daniel didn't argue. He understood something they didn't. When your discipline makes others uncomfortable, it's often because it reveals a contrast they don't want to face. Normal behavior produces normal results. Daniel was no longer interested in normal. The system had done its real work quietly. It hadn't just built a habit, it had erased an escape route. There was no longer a version of Daniel who negotiated with himself. The old identity, the one who delayed, restarted, and made excuses, had no place to return to. And this is where the story stops being about habits. It becomes about death and rebirth. The death of the person who tries, the birth of the person who simply is. But there is one final question, because this level of consistency is not impressive, it is irreversible.
What you have just seen is not a routine, it is not discipline, and it is not self-improvement. It is identity reconstruction. Most people spend their lives trying to change their behavior while protecting the version of themselves that keeps failing. This system does the opposite. It removes choice, it removes negotiation, it removes escape. Not to make life harder, but to make action inevitable. The moment consistency becomes automatic, effort becomes irrelevant. You no longer ask, "Will I do this today?" You only ask, "How will I adapt and continue?" And this is why people will say you've changed, why they'll say you're extreme, why they'll say you're not normal. They need you to remain negotiable so they can remain comfortable. But you are not here to be comfortable. You are here to be unbreakable. So the real question is not whether this system works. The question is this: are you ready to let your inconsistent self disappear? Because once this transformation begins, there is no going back. You don't return to trying. You return as someone who simply cannot stop. If this story resonated with you, make your declaration. Not silently, not someday. Decide who you are and remove every path back. And when people look at you and say, "That's not normal," you'll know exactly why.